Hey everyone, this is Mark from Wiki Design. Check out this really cool web animation I made of this Blink-182 and Green Day poster. Now tell me that's not pretty cool. So I wanted to create this video tutorial and kind of show you step by step on how I was able to pull this off just using Photoshop and the 3D program called Spline. I'll leave a link in the description to Spline. And I originally got the design from this right here, this book called The Art of Modern Rock. And if you open it up, you can see that's the exact one I scanned in. So this book is full of all different types of cool posters for different, rock bands and stuff like that. So I picked this up at a garage sale and I wanted to finally get around to making a tutorial like this. So here I am. And if you want to actually purchase this book, I highly recommend it. I'll leave a link in the description below so you can purchase it on Amazon. Now let's jump into the tutorial. Okay, so the first thing you're going to need to do is actually scan it into the computer. So I just have a regular Canon printer that has a scanner built in. So what I did is I made sure I scanned it at a pretty good resolution. So if I go over here, you could see that it's at 2245 pixels width and we're at 3600 pixels high with a resolution of 600 pixels. So that's a pretty good scan to start out with because on the website itself, if I pull this up, this is as big as it ever needs to be. So what you want to do is make sure that you're going to trace everything out at like the highest resolution and then we can scale stuff down later. So it's always best to kind of work at the best scan or resolution you can and then kind of just shrink down from there. So let me show you what I did over here on the right side inside of Photoshop. You can see if I zoom in here, this is about the quality that that printer is able to scan in. So it looks pretty good, but when you get really close up, you can start to see that this is just like a print on a piece of paper. So there's going to be like little imperfections and stuff like that. But let me go ahead and zoom back out and show you kind of how I traced everything out and then how you need to save everything out. So the very first thing is you're going to want to make sure that, let me go back into here. You kind of want to, in this case, I wanted to animate the text in, then this text right here, this text, then have like the popcorn pop in, have these separate, and then this text down here. So it's always best to kind of visually know how you want to trace things out and then literally just start tracing things out and fixing up everything. So what you should end up with is something along these lines. So I wanted, like I said, all of those elements are just floating in front of this base layer. So I had to go into here and actually just start removing things. So if I go into here, you can see that this is the black background for just the title right here. So it says Blink-182 Green Day. I needed to make sure I trace that out. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it. I usually recommend using the pen tool inside of Photoshop. But in this situation, since the resolution doesn't really matter too much and you can not be so perfect, you can actually just use like the magnetic lasso tool. And then right here I had like the frequency at like 91, and so I was able to go ahead and like trace out the popcorn like this. And like I said, it might not be perfect, but you can always go ahead and then fix it later. And then just trace everything out however you want to have your design. So let me show you how I have everything here on the left side, and then you can kind of understand. So let me turn on here. So like I said, I had to trace out the Blink-182 and the Green Day, and then anywhere that there was popcorn kind of over that. So if I go right over here to popcorn top, you could see that I had to actually, in Photoshop, there might be cases where things kind of overlap. And so I had to kind of manually add in the D and the N right here because this popcorn was overlaying it. So I literally just took like a chunk of the D here, copy and pasted it down here. And same thing up here. I took this chunk of the N and just duplicated it down here. So depending on your use case, you might be able to use the generate function inside of Photoshop where it can automatically scan your photo and then fill in any missing gaps. But let me just zoom back out over here and just kind of turn on all the layers the way I wanted it to animate. So you can see I have this right here is actually just going to be this background. Let me go here actually. This might be a little bit better to show you like this. So I have this right here where this animates in, and this is just going to be a regular square with that background color. But up here I wanted to show you that you can actually just trace out the letters if you want. So depending on how you want to do it, but I figured this was a good example to kind of show both. And then this text down here is going to pop up. I just have that with the yellow. And then we have the popcorn box, which was always on by default. And then we have the popcorn come up right here. And then if I open up this palette or this group right here, what I did is I separated out all of the different popcorn sections. So these two kernels right here, these are going to be pop 1, pop 2, pop 3, and pop 4 is this one over here. And I added like a little drop shadow like the original artwork had. And then what I wanted to do is, if you look in the example here, I have it where this piece right here, the last popcorn, I just animated it up and down just to kind of give a different of a visual. And then I have it where this is kind of a little Easter egg. If you wanted to do something fun on your design, you can have it where you click it and then it goes to a website or a special link. So you can add in cool little like Easter eggs. What I originally wanted to do was have you click on like his nose right here, and then I could easily have something come out of the box in like a pop-up window. You could do pretty much anything. That's what's cool about 3D, is that each one of these layers is actually kind of layering on top of it. And the next part of the tutorial, I'll show you visually how everything's going to look inside of Spline. So you could easily have it where you click the button here on his, nose, and then something will come up and then have it go somewhere. You could do pretty much anything you want. So the one tip I have is make sure you're very organized and you name everything very good, because in this case, you need to make sure that all of your layers are going to match up to the layer names inside of Spline, because you don't want to mix and match your layers or anything like that. You want to keep everything kind of consistent. And so you want to make sure that your layer names in like Photoshop is the same as like your file names, and then the way it's going to be inside of Spline. So that's why I was very descriptive with, the text and everything down here. And then this bottom one is just the text. And then, like I said, you want to have a base layer where it's like nothing on it. That's going to go in the back of the animation, and then everything else is just going to kind of sit on top. So what you need to do now is piece all of these things out depending on how you want it. So each one of these is its own file. So the title is its own file. The saves the day right here, this little pop-up. The box is a file, this popcorn, these 4 popcorns down here, and this. So I have quite a few different files. So let me show you what that looks like right here. So as you can see right here, this is what we're going to be ending up with. We're going to end up with all of these different formats right here. So now I'm going to show you that what I wanted to do is make sure it's as optimized as possible. So I'm going to make sure that they're all saved out as WebP. So now in the latest versions of like Photoshop, you could save WebP out natively, which is nice. And so you could see right here, these sizes are very small. You don't want to have it where these things are like megabytes big, because if you're serving it on a website, it needs to be as optimized as possible. So all of these selected is only like 200 kilobytes, which is not too bad. So after you have everything saved out, what I recommend is, let me pull up this. I knew that this right here is no wider than like 600 pixels. So there's not any reason to ever save these images out at anything over like 600 pixels. That's how you're going to keep your file sizes small. So what I recommend is, once you are 100% done with your master scan and you have all your layers traced out and everything, just go ahead inside of like Photoshop and change the image size to what you want it to be. So like it's now going to be width 600 and the height is 978. So like I said, you shrink that down, and then you just go ahead and start saving everything out. So if I wanted to just do a quick example, I'm going to save this one right here called Saves the Day. I'm going to copy that into a new document. And as you can see right here, it's only 100 pixels wide by 236. The resolution right here doesn't matter. You can put it to 72, whatever. It's going on the web, so that number doesn't matter. So now that you have that, what you want to do is now go up to File, Save As, and then choose WebP right here, the very last one. And just give it a name, and it should be saved out at this resolution right here, 100 by 236, and it's only 10 kilobytes. So you're just going to want to go ahead and do that for all of your layers. And like I said, make sure everything is very organized, because when we add it into the 3D program, it's going to make your life a lot easier. Okay, so now here we are inside of Spline. So this is how I made it look. So this is going to be the end product right here. So as you can see right here, the very back plane is that new kind of blank canvas. And then I just have everything kind of layered on top. So I have a title right here. I have these other ones coming in. We have the popcorn. So you can see everything is layered out, and the popcorn box, for example, is in front of these popcorns. And so when I animate it in, I have it going from here up to here and kind of fading in. So that's how it could look at the end. So now let me go ahead and just kind of walk through how I set this up. I'm not going to be doing like a step-by-step because this is going to be a very long tutorial. But let me just show you how I have a few things set up and just kind of how I export it and then you put on a website. So the very first thing is I recommend going into front view. So if you're inside of Spline, you can go ahead into front view right here. So in this use case, everything is still going to be flat in like 2D, but in a 3D environment. So that's why you want to use this camera right here, the orthographic camera, and not perspective. If you were doing like 3D objects, like if all of this was modeled out and you had everything kind of modeled, then you can do perspective and it probably would look a little bit better. But anytime you're working in like 2D, just go ahead and always just use this because it's going to make your life a lot easier. It's easier to line things up and everything along those lines. So the very first thing is you're going to want to make sure that your background is in here first, and then you just kind of layer everything in. So you just went up, I just went up here, did a rectangle. And then if you look right here, this is going to be really important. The size of your objects need to match up the size of your images right here. And if you look right here, that is the blank background. It's at 600 by 978. So I just made sure that that always matches up, because if it doesn't match up, it's not going to fit perfectly. And then you're going to have a lot of weird things. So you want to make sure you always match up your dimension sizes to your rectangles inside of here and your textures. And then what I did is I just added a image material right here. I took the lighting off. And so if you click right here where it says image, this is the image I uploaded. It's the 600 by 978. And then I'm just using a regular UV projection. Wrapping doesn't really matter. You can change the sharpness, whatever might look good. In this case, I just kept it by default at smooth. And you're gonna wanna make sure you have crop on and then scale 1:1. Since you have your dimensions all matched up, you shouldn't have to worry about scaling. So that's why it's just 1:1 right here. And that's it. So now when you render that out in the 3D program, it's just going to render that out like that. And if for some reason it's not showing underneath each object, you can click right here underneath visibility. Sides, you can do both, or front or back. So if I do back right here, you see it kind of goes away. So in this case, I just kept it as both. And so all you have to do now is just kind of repeat that process. And so let me just go into the title, for example. And I did the same thing. I made sure that the object size right here is the same as the image. And then I just uploaded that image right here, 533 by 161. And then that matches right there. And if you're using WebP, it's going to be transparent like that. So that's what's really good about WebP. It's going to keep your file sizes smaller than like a JPEG or a PNG or anything like that. And it has transparency, because you're probably going to want to do transparency. If you did cut out the letters, like in this example, I had to cut the letters out. Right here, you could use like a JPEG on these two if you wanted, because I have the background included, but you don't have to do that. I still recommend just using WebP because it should be smaller. But in this case right here with the popcorn, I had to make sure that that was transparent. Same thing with this. You want to always make sure everything is kind of transparent. And so you kind of just layer everything up the way you want it. And like I said, if you go to front view, everything is going to be flat. And so it's going to be real easy to start moving stuff around. It's not until you get everything included is when you can start to go into a 3D perspective like this and then start to change how far back everything is. So let me show you. If you select the very back object, that is going to be what you want. Because if I hit play right here, you want to have that back plane as far back as possible. And then if I move my mouse, you can see right here is following. So depending if you want the effect like that to be a little more dramatic, you would move it further back. So hopefully that makes sense. So let me go ahead and show you underneath position. I like to always work in like absolute 0, 0 position. So what that means in the 3D space is it makes your life a lot easier. It puts everything right here in the coordinates of the X at 0, the Y at 0, and the Z at 0. So it's always best to be working kind of in the 0 coordinates. You don't want to be working like way out here. So if I zoom out in the middle of nowhere, you don't want to have like your scene like way over here, especially for something simple like this. Trust me, using 3D for years and years and years, you want to make sure that you always start at 0, 0 if you can. So that right there is kind of all right at the 0, 0. Where my mouse is, that is absolute 0 position in the whole environment. And then all I do is just, I drag that back 300 units. So like I said, if I wanted that effect to be super dramatic, and if I hit play now, it moves around a lot more. You see that? So depending if you want it to move a lot or a little, would depend on how far you want to move that. So if I bring that back to, I believe it was like -300, that was like a good number. And then if you worked with websites before, it's kind of like a Z-index. You just kind of layer everything out. So now I have the Blink-182 title at -100. I have this one at -250, -250. And then something like this with a popcorn, I have that closer to the camera, so it doesn't move around as much. And that one's just like at 100. I made sure the popcorn was behind it and kind of sitting down. And then if I rotate the camera, these little popcorns down here, each one of these is at, was at 110. So it's 10 units in front of the popcorn. So depending on your use case, you could play around with how far you need the Z, and that's going to give you a different effect. And then I just have that text down here at like -100. So now I'm going to jump into how I was able to animate the text in. So if you look right here, the Blink-182 and Green Day title, that's the #1 thing that fades in. So I'll show you how I was able to fade that in. So I just selected that layer. And then what you need to do is create 2 states. You need to create a base state and like a regular state. So the base state, you can see right here, is like 0 opacity for that material. And then I just have it fading in like 100%. And so all you need to do is click this plus button and go down into your next state. And then if you look right here where it says material, make sure that that's at 100 for the state. And then if I hit base state, you can see that that's at 0 now. So it's just literally animating 0% opacity of this material, which is just the image, up to 100. So that's all you have to do. And then you need to have an event in order for that to start. So you just go ahead and see that I have this one right here called start. So by default, this is the very first one, is just called start. And so that means the start of the animation, it's going to do something. And then what I did is you can click the plus button and choose transition. So we're going to be transitioning between the base state right here and the regular state. And in this situation, I have it take 2 seconds, and I'm using the ease in and out, like kind of transition. So it kind of fades in and out. It's not so dramatic. It's not like jarring from like 0 to 100 real quick. And then in this one, I don't have any delays, but in the next ones, I do have delays. So if you see right here, I have this fade in next after that title. So it's the same process. I have the base state at 0 for the material, and the regular state is at 100. So it's fading in. But if you look right here, the only thing different is I changed that animation to only be 1 second. And then there's a delay of 0.5. So it's going to wait 0.5 and then start the animation. So if I look right here, 0.5 was like right when that loaded in. And then you just kind of go down the list. So I wanted to animate this next. And so if I look right here, this animation delay was at 1 second. So it kind of starts here, 0.5, then 1, and then I have the popcorn come in. So as you can see, when I select the base state for the popcorn, it disappeared and went behind the bucket. That's because I changed the position. So if you look right here, the base state and the state, you can see right here the y coordinates changed. So if I look right here, the y coordinates were like at 86 for the base state, and then right here there's at 226, and then I made the material fade in. So that's at 100%. The base state's at 0. That has a delay of 2 seconds, and this is pretty cool. This is like the spring effect for the transition. So what that if you watch right here, when it plays and the popcorn comes in, it will like spring. So it's a pretty cool little effect. So it looks like popcorn, so springs. So that's what that effect is right there. And you can always go in and change any of this stuff. So you can change the damping and the stiffness, mass. So there's a whole bunch of settings inside of here. And so that's basically how you're able to pull off the whole entire animation. So let me go down here and show you one cool little Easter egg. Would be if you wanted to have something clickable, like a hidden feature or an Easter egg, you can go ahead and just add a different event to it. So in this one, I have the original one where it's just transitioning. But if you look right here, you could do a mouse down event. And very simple, all you need to do is just select mouse down when you click on events, trigger on this object, and then it's just going to open up a link. So I just have it go to our website in a new tab. You could do new window, whatever it may be. So what's cool about this is you could do like a unique URL. So if you wanted to have an Easter egg where someone can purchase tickets to a concert in this case and have a special page just if they clicked on that piece of popcorn, you could have a unique URL just for that. And so there's a lot of like different possibilities you can do. You can have anything clickable really inside of this object and make it do something like that. But I just wanted to show how that worked. So now the next thing is I'm going to explain how the camera works. And if you want to watch right here, if I shrink down this website, so I wanted to have it where if somebody's on a mobile device, for example, I wanted to have it where it would still be usable on mobile. So if you watch right here, when I start to scale down and it gets pretty close to the edges, if you see what happened right there, I had it jump down into a different size right here. So what you could do is change the position or zoom levels of your camera depending on the resolution. So that's really important for something like this if you want to make sure it works inside of different devices. So let me go ahead and show you how that was done. So what I recommend is go into the front view right here, bring your viewport to something where it kind of fits inside the screen right here. And now since we're going to be using an orthographic camera, it doesn't really matter where you are in space. It takes a minute to understand how orthographic is different than perspective. So with orthographic, you're actually not changing like where the position of your cameras are in your 3D environment. You're essentially just changing like the zooming level inside the viewport. So they will make a little more sense once I kind of go along. So if I go up into here and hit plus, and if I scroll down into the bottom, there's a camera. And so now let me just call this like main camera, just so it makes more sense. So now on the right side, if I select main camera, you can see right here, nothing's changed. Now, if you look right here where it says zoom underneath your camera, once I start to do that, you can see I can zoom in. So I was a little dramatic. So if I do like 1.2, you can see that it zooms in as being cropped off. So something on mobile, I want it to be like 0.6 or something like that. But then on normal like desktop, you can do like 0.9, whatever it may be. So in this case, let's just start with 0.9. And now what we need to do is underneath states, we need to have the regular state, which is going to be like desktop. And then let's say the zoom out state needs to be at like 0.6. So we want to have it where it will scale down to that when you get to those special dimensions, whatever it may be. And so what you need to do is just go underneath events. And instead of start at the very end, there's this one called screen resize. So go ahead and click that. And if you know that these dimensions are just like 768, you can go ahead and remove any of these other ones. So let's just have it where if it's less than 768 pixels, it's going to scale down that camera. Or I shouldn't say scale down, it's zooming. That's why it's a little confusing because it's not really moving in position. It's just changing the zoom level. And then what you need to do is click main camera. So target is the main camera, the base state, and then the regular state. And then you could do like a subtle like transition if you want, of like 1 second if you wanted. And that's it. So now when I go into this mode and I start to scale down, if you watch right here, when it gets to like 768, it's going to go ahead and scale that down. See how it takes a second? So that's that little animation. So if you wanted to jump like the one I originally had, you can go ahead and just change that 1 to a 0. So you can go into here. If you wanted to not have that little animation, you just change that 1 to a 0. And now underneath export, let me show you the settings I had. So if I went underneath my play settings, what you're going to want to do is make sure that the user can't do any of these things like orbit, pan, zoom, soft orbit. You want to turn all those off. And we have the background color right here. I have the page scroll on default. If you don't know how to change the background color, you just click right here and like the empty space, and on the right side there's the scene. So this is where you can go ahead and change the background color right here. Now let me go back into the play settings, and you want to make sure on the different mobile devices you disable orbit, pan, hit none, and then this right here is going to be that cool little effect. If you hit play, it shows and it kind of moves the camera. So in this case, I wanted to have it on hover, orbit the camera, and in this situation I have it at sensitivity of 5, 10, dampering, and no reset. So depending on how big your scene is and all of that, these numbers are going to change probably dramatically for you. So if it's a much bigger scene, you're going to need more sensitivity, whatever it may be. But since this is just a few planes sitting out there, 5 and 10 was a good setting right here. And then I kind of kept everything else by default. And one really cool thing is you're going to want to make sure that you click this run test underneath performance before you export it to make sure that you're in the green. So you can see right here, this scene is only going to be 158 kilobytes. So that's pretty cool. I mean, that's why you need to make sure that you shrink your images down and you're working with WebP, because 158 kilobytes, sometimes a font on a website is bigger than that. So as long as you have this and it's like under a megabyte, you're in a really good spot and it's not going to take too much loading. Now, if you do have a scene where it is going to be a lot bigger, just make sure it doesn't like auto load on someone's website. Maybe have it where it can play in a new window and kind of give a warning, say, hey, this is a bigger scene. So that's why doing like 3D stuff in the web isn't a big deal if you are going to have a big model. Just don't make it where it's automatically going to load on someone's website because it's going to kill your performance and all of that. So once you do that, what I did is I kept it very simple in this case, and you can just click copy embed. And so now I'm going to jump over into Elementor really quick. So that's the page builder we use inside of WordPress. I'm going to show you how I was able to add this. So this isn't going to be unique to just WordPress and Elementor. You can add this to any type of website that can take HTML code. So you can add it to like any builder out there, Wix, Squarespace, any of these things. You can even custom code it if you know how to do that. But let me jump into Elementor and show you how easy it is to add that. And here we are inside of an Elementor page, and I'll just kind of quickly go through all the settings and everything. So in this case, I just have one big container right here with an HTML widget, and I just dropped in that HTML iframe code that we just received from Spline. You could just put that in here. And then I'm going to show you some cool little tricks in order to make sure that your embed like fills up the whole screen. So what you're going to want to do is click the container it's going to be sitting in. And then right here where it says the min height is at 100 VH. So if I scroll right here, you're going to see that this is going to fill up the whole width of the screen. And then I just made sure that it was centered right here. And so that's how you can change the height of your entire container. So now if I jump into the HTML widget, we need to do two different things. We need to make sure that it's going to always be full width and then take the height of that container. And to do that, what we need to do is go underneath advanced. I changed the width to full width right here. And then we're going to be doing absolute position. So what that's going to do is force it to sit right here in the top left corner of that container and then stretch. And what you need to do is underneath the HTML widget inside of the custom CSS, you could just type in the word like selector height 100%. So this is going to force it to be 100% because if you remove this line of code, it's not going to work correctly. It's going to probably be cut off like that. So that's why you need to do absolute position and kind of force it. And so that's it. So now when you hit publish on this website and view it on the front end, this is how it should look. So if I start right here, if I start to scale down the website, you could see when I get to like 768 pixels, it will scale down. So that way it will ensure it will always kind of fit in different mobile devices and all of that. And then if you wanted, you could even do it where on these different devices, if you don't want as much height, you can go into your container, change like the VH. So if you have more stuff down here on the website, you can always adjust that. And then on mobile, same thing, you can always adjust that to like 90%, whatever it may be. But I just wanted to kind of show you that you could do pretty much anything. Once you get the model inside of a website, then you can control the width and the heights and all of that type of stuff. And that's it for this video on how I was able to make this Blink-182 and Green Day poster really come to life in 3D and then put it on a website. So let me know in the comments below if you like this video, if you want me to make more videos like this in the future, just let me know. And that's it for this video. So thanks for watching. This is Mark from Wiki Design.